It's going to be consistency, not just a positive final score, that will prove that the New Orleans Saints have a bright future ahead.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, Kellen Moore is starting to build some momentum. I'll tell you how and why it's incredibly important to the future of this franchise. The New Orleans Saints defense will see two big challenges this weekend in Rico Dowdle as well as Tetairoa McMillan. Why defending both is going to be complicated, and we're going to kick everything off with the fact that the New Orleans Saints need not just a win this weekend, but they'll need to show consistency in order to prove that there's a bright future ahead. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for helping us get here as we bring you your team every day. The New Orleans Saints will be hosting the Carolina Panthers this weekend. And while a win will go a long way, it's going to be consistency on the offensive side, in my opinion, that will be the most telltale sign of positive days ahead for this team and for head coach Kellen Moore. The New Orleans Saints need a follow-up victory this weekend. And that victory can happen on the field in terms of the scoreboard, or it can happen on the field in terms of all of these big positives that we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks showing up for yet another weekend. Tyler Shough continuing to be an ascending rookie, dare I say, star, with either his ability through the air as a passer or on the ground as a runner, getting away from trouble or in designed runs. Him being able to utilize his entire tool set and being able to show that that wasn't just a fluke up against Carolina last time, that it wasn't a fluke against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, showing that all of those skills that are in his toolbox that he can have available to him on the field on a week in and week out basis. So showing consistency on the playmaking side for Tyler Shough would be a major positive for New Orleans. Young rookie Devin Neal in the backfield, showing that the game that they had against the #6 rushing defense in the NFL last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wasn't just because it was inclement weather. It wasn't just because of any specific fluke that happened, but that this is a running back that is now ready to potentially take the helm at the position for the rest of the season, as Alvin Kamara has still not been back to practice just yet. And of course, a couple of guys right behind him in Evan Hull, as well as Audric Estime, a pair of second-year rushers that now have an opportunity to prove that they can be contributors on the ground as well. Taking that performance from Tampa last week and showing it again, following it up here at home up against the Carolina Panthers would instill a lot of confidence about the direction of the team's rushing offense. Continuing with the passing offense, showing from a guy that has been pretty consistent over the course of the past couple of weeks, Devaughn Vele, that the game against Miami, where he had over 90 receiving yards, followed up as the leading receiver in a game where the Saints didn't, and really Tampa didn't have the passing game super available to them because of the rain, the weather, all of that. But he still led the team with 40 receiving yards and showed up in the clutch along with wide receiver Chris Olave when they needed to convert 3rd and 8. 3rd and 10 late in the game. Both of those guys showing up in big moments. Can they show that they can do that on a weekly basis? For me, this game up against the Carolina Panthers represents more than just what happens on the scoreboard and represents more than just what happens when it comes to the final record of the season. You'd like to see the Saints on the right side of both of those conversations, but even if they end up on the right side of both those conversations and some things on the offense take steps back, I think that would prove to be a little bit concerning. The Saints got off to a fast start last week. Keep that up this week. The Saints built some second half momentum when it came to third downs. They didn't convert a single third down in the first half, but they went 71.4% in the second half against Tampa in order to help ice that game. They were 4 of 5 in the fourth quarter all by itself. Keep that up. And the Saints over the course of the past 2 weeks are also 4 of 5 with red zone touchdowns. So getting those red zone possessions and turning those into 7 points as opposed to either 3 points or when they had their kicking situation earlier on in the season, sometimes they were leaving those possessions with a goose egg with 0 points. And so Tyler Shough continuing to show up and make plays. Devin Neal continuing to prove that he will be a big-time impact player out of the backfield. Chris Olave and Devaughn Vele proving more and more each week that they can continue to be a dynamic duo at wide receiver, or at least a big-time reliable tandem between the two. Would love to see Mason Tipton continue to show what it is that he has shown as a kick returner as well, but then as a unit for the New Orleans Saints offense, proving that they can stay on the football field, extend drives, and cash those in for points, proving that they can get into striking distance in the red zone and walk away with touchdowns, not field goals or empty possessions, proving that they are able to continue this trajectory that they have shown over the course of the last couple of games is just as important as what the win would say about where this team is headed for its future. They can get the win, but if all of those things end up still taking steps back, it would raise some eyebrows. It would raise some question marks. And so showing consistency on top of the game result, I think is going to be massively important for this New Orleans Saints team. I am picking the Saints to win this game. If you caught our crossover Thursday episode yesterday, you know that. I do think that the Saints can absolutely walk away with a win and get a win at home. I think that that is not just something that they can do. I would almost say it's something that they need to do in this game, but it's not going to be easy. J.C. Horn had 2 plays last year, the Carolina Panthers cornerback, and not last year, but in their last meeting, before the bye week, week 10, where he fell down and Tyler Shough was able to find a pair of open wide receivers. Actually fell down once on a play that Tyler Shough was already starting to make, getting the ball downfield to Chris Olave. He fell while the ball was in the air. But then at a later time, Tyler Shough able to find Juwan Johnson as J.C. Horn fell down. He's not going to keep falling down, and he's a very good defensive player. Expect him to be a little bit more ready to show up in this game than maybe recent games, because he wants to prove that what happened against the Saints the first time was a fluke, and that he is not somebody that's just going to keep falling over and giving up easy, big touchdown receptions and things like that. And so New Orleans will need to show that all the way from all the positives that they've built from that win, Tyler Shough's first win against Carolina week 10, all the way throughout are consistent positives and not flukes that they found along the way. As for the New Orleans Saints defense, they have a pair of big challenges ahead of them, because what might stop Tetairoa McMillan could open up the game for Rico Dowdle and vice versa. How the Saints can go about limiting both of these players, let's break that down next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by ZocDoc. It's 2025, nearly 2026, and that means that the days of waiting for something to become a full-blown medical emergency are over, right? Don't do that before you go and see a doctor. Don't worry about I'm just going to walk this off, or, I might have just been sleeping wrong, because it's time for you to take your health seriously, and ZocDoc is going to make it easier than ever. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. I use it. It has made things super simple, even when it comes down to same-day visits, because the real appointment times are constantly updated. Whether you need routine checkups or you have some issues that you've been meaning to get checked out, ZocDoc is the way to go. So stop putting your doctor's appointments off and take care of what you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. And another thing that should be much easier these days than it has been in the past is buying a car. That should be an exciting moment, not a confusing and frustrating one. And that's where our friends over at Car Gurus come in. They'll make sure that you have all the confidence that you deserve during the car buying process, because when it comes to making a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. That's exactly what you'll find over at cargurus.com. I use Car Gurus as I've been looking at maybe upgrading, getting a new car and all that. I love it because you get deals that you can compare to others, and then they keep everything with verified dealerships, upfront pricing, which makes everything feel a lot more transparent and stress-free as well. Car Gurus is going to connect you with trusted dealerships for a transparent and hassle-free buying experience with over 4 million listings, the most of any major automotive online marketplace. So buy or sell your car today with Car Gurus. Head over to cargurus.com to get started, cargurus.com. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints might have gotten a win against the Carolina Panthers 17-7 in Week 10, but they shouldn't expect it to be a walk in the park here in Week 15. And a big reason why is because of the playmaking ability of both running back Rico Dowdle in Carolina, as well as rookie wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. Tetairoa McMillan right now leads all rookies, period, not rookie wide receivers, all rookies in receiving yards right now. He has 57 receptions for 826 receiving yards and 6 touchdown catches as well, which is tied for the rookie lead in the league. So he's just one away from kind of taking that mantle as well. And a big part of what he has done so far this season has been downfield. Now I'm using air quotes for downfield because there's always a different definition of exactly what downfield means. And our friends over at Next Gen Stats, they include 10 or more air yards as downfield targets. So we're not talking about 20-yard targets here. We're not talking about 15-yard targets here. We're talking about 10 or more. And right now, he has 38 receptions of 10 or more yards. The New Orleans Saints passing defense has done a really good job against this. But it's going to be a challenge because slowing down a guy like Tetairoa McMillan, sometimes you have to do things that make you susceptible to the run game. And so how do the Saints kind of balance this? So far, according to Next Gen Stats, the Saints have not allowed a receiver to finish a game with more than 75 yards on downfield passes, which again are 10 or more air yards. And so when you have a guy that's been really impactful in that area of the game, going up against a defense that's been very good at defending that area of the game, something's got to give. Something's got to break one way or another. And so you'd like for the Saints to be on the right side of that conversation. Here's the interesting thing. You think about downfield passes, and I think a lot of us think of like go routes, right? Those fly routes right down the sideline, vertical, all go special type stuff to where you are just off the snap, you're just running down the football field. And that's a logical understanding. It was the first thing I thought of too. And so I went to our friends over at True Media and I looked to see the routes that were run by Tetairoa McMillan so far over the course of this year. And he indeed has a few different routes that he's run 80 times. And those are his highest routes. That includes like hitches, things like that. But it also includes go routes. Here's the interesting thing though. On 80 go routes run so far this season, he's only been targeted a few times, about 18 times on those. And he's only caught 3 of those catches, of those targets, 1 for 15 yards that was challenged by New England, but then was upheld, 1 for 19 yards, and another for 23 yards. So even his go routes aren't necessarily pushing 40, 50 yards down the field. It's been the hitches, the ins, and the outs. And so when we're talking about hitches, we're talking about, pushing forward and then turning around to come back towards the quarterback. Towards the quarterback is a hitch. Going towards the outside is a comeback. Running sort of in routes or digs is something to where you might push 15 yards upfield and then cut on a 90-degree angle going towards the middle of the field. The out is the opposite side of that, to where you're running towards the sideline on a 90-degree angle. Those have been the routes where he's been most consistently targeted for more than 10 yards. So they like to push those routes a little bit further. So now you look at the coverages that are really good at defending out routes. You're talking about maybe cover 3 with 3 deep defenders, and then maybe you shade some of those underneath coverage players out into kind of the hook flat areas to where they're getting a little bit of depth, but they're playing towards the perimeter or boundary, which we're talking about the sideline in that case. But then You could also do that with some cover 4 coverage, or some man coverage, of course, always works as well. But those out-breaking or in-breaking routes against man coverage, you want to be a little bit careful about, particularly the in-breaking routes. And so that's why you don't necessarily want to do that for the ins, right? Those digs that he's been running and finding a lot of success with. In those cases, you're probably using a bit of a different coverage metric, like maybe a cover 2 with 2 deep defenders and then a few underneath defenders to help take away the middle of the field. You can drop maybe a middle defender with a little bit more depth as a linebacker or something like that to take away some of those opportunities as well. But against cover 2, you're going to be susceptible to in-breaking routes sometimes, depending upon how they're being run, what coverage you're running, things like that. So there's a lot of interesting things that'll go, but one of the best ways to take away in-breaking routes is doing something that the Saints do very well, which is play a little bit of zone match. Those are the ones where you're pattern matching and you're making calls and shifts based upon how the routes develop in front of you. So a player might have a responsibility if his assignment breaks in versus a different responsibility if his assignment breaks out. And then it all changes if somebody goes vertical and all those other things, to where you start off in zone, but then maybe you transition a little bit into man. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of go through all of this. And I think that the combination of the in-breaking routes like digs and the out-breaking routes like outs specifically being such a big part of the Tetairoa McMillan success so far this season, including those hitches as well, that a cover 3 match system makes a lot of sense. And so I'll be very interested to see if that's the way that the Saints go. The issue with trying to take away the deep ball is that if you start playing a lot of cover 2, you're opening up your opportunities, taking safeties out to a team just being able to say, all right, well, buckle up, we're going to run right at you. Typically, if you're playing cover 2, and what we call, we heard Spencer Rattler talk about facing cover 2 early on in the 2025 season. He called it a shell fest, right? So playing like a shell defensive coverage like that kind of dares you to run the football. And so what you might do to take away the downfield passing might open stuff up for Rico Dowdle to impact you in the run game. And so that's why maybe the cover 3 match type of coverage plan, which is something that the Saints do run quite a bit. It's something that Brandon Staley coaches. It's kind of the cover 6, cover 9 Vic Fangio approach as well, in terms of having like one defender on one side of the field take half of the deep area while 2 defenders split the other half, things like that. Those types of moments and mechanics might be exactly what it is that the New Orleans Saints need to do. So they can't focus on specifically trying to take away the run game, because if they do that, they might find themselves susceptible to the deep ball with Tetairoa McMillan running those routes. But then they also necessarily can't just focus on Tetairoa McMillan, because then you're opening yourself up to being susceptible to the run game. So the Saints' typical zone match or man match approach might be a really good way to go in this one. So I'll be very intrigued to see how Brandon Staley and Dave Canales, the offensive play caller and head coach for Carolina, kind of match up in this game, because Brandon Staley's got 2 big weapons and more, right? We can't forget about Xavier Legette and some of these other, the tight end Sanders and all that. We can't forget about them. But you got to worry about Tetairoa McMillan, and you got to worry about Rico Dowdle. So how do you defend both without making yourself susceptible to the other? It's going to be a very interesting chess match between those 2 sides of the football. All right, next up, Kellen Moore is building momentum. Let's tell you how and why that's so important for this team's future. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to go to play daily fantasy sports, and especially here during the holiday season when you have so much going on. Bowl games, college football playoffs, basketball matchups ongoing, playoff pushes in the NFL, and it's all happening all at once. And that's where Prize Picks comes in, because when it comes to making choices like you and I do every day, Prize Picks is the most fun place to make the right choices as you go through. Here's all you got to do. You pick 2 to 6 players, or 2 or more players actually. Choose more or less in their Prize Picks projections. You get those right, and then bang, you're walking away with a big time payday. And right now with the early payout feature, a great bonus over at Prize Picks. So if your lineup starts strong, you may actually get the option to cash out early and walk away with your winnings before the day is even done. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Kellen Moore's offense and Kellen Moore himself are starting to pick up some momentum, and it's all at the perfect time. We appreciate you very much for making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show. Speaking of everydayers, I want you to come over and check out the Everydayer Club. Maybe you're looking for ad-free Locked On Saints and Locked On Podcast Network experiences. You can get that for $5 a month by heading over to LockedOnSaints.supercast.com. You can come and check us out over there. There's also the All Access program, which includes a bunch of bonus episodes, exclusive episodes, and exclusive content as well. You also get access to our free merch store and our big Discord server, which includes all of our Locked On hosts. Make sure you come through for that. Once again, LockedOnSaints.supercast.com to get started today. I think Kellen Moore is building some momentum. And I think it's evident that he has been building this momentum since he got his quarterback going, and that the team has obviously been winning games, right? 2 out of 4 games over the course of the last, or 2 wins out of the last 4 games, excuse me. All of that is positive. But I think beyond that, you're hearing the message a little bit more all across the coaching staff and the players as well. Everyone is in lockstep. Everyone understands that they're building something this year, and that has kept everybody very much bought in all throughout this process. Brandon Staley spoke with us today, and he talked a little bit about that from Kellen Moore's perspective and from Kellen Moore's leadership, this team has learned how to approach its game weeks, how to approach coming out of games. One of the things that Brandon Staley talked about was this idea of never being quite finished. He said, when I asked him about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going for it 7 times, which is insane, by the way. Only 2 teams have done that so far this year, Tampa and the Tennessee Titans, but going for it 7 times on 4th downs. If he saw that as a little bit of a challenge, and I asked Kellen Moore the same thing on Monday, and both of them agreed that, yeah, it's a little bit of like, you want to have a chip on your shoulder, you feel challenged by that, and you want to go out there and you want to make the play. And I think that that's a really good attitude to start to develop. That when you have a team that's looking across from you and saying, we can get that yard, or we can get those 4 yards, and then you come out and show them that they can't, it takes you all the way back to the first Tampa Bay game when they were making stops defensively on the 1 yard line. And now all of a sudden the offense is picking up some confidence and some swagger, right? And then special teams is doing the same thing, right? Big 50-plus yard kick return to open up the game by Mason Tipton. They almost had another one on the next one, but one guy slipped, and then that ended up being sort of the linchpin for that play not breaking, but you saw how close it was. And then even as Brandon Staley mentioned, on the 2 times that they didn't stop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on 4th down, that the team did everything right. It's just that the offense made the play. And that had they gotten 0 of 7 on 4th down, it would have been a masterclass in that situation. But it wasn't. They went 2 for 7. Tampa Bay did. And so Brandon Staley saw that as a, hey, you're always chasing perfection, but you're never going to get to it. And so now they use that to get better and better and better. And I think that that's something that we've heard from Kellen Moore from the very beginning, being echoed by these other coaches and these other players, that there's always going to be a pursuit for betterness for this team. And so we're watching the momentum begin to build. And you can kind of see, as a Saints fan, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel starting to appear, right? We're not talking about this team. We have to remember that, all of this is in context of a 3-10 team trying to prove something. And so our evaluation right now is not, is this a good team? Is this a bad team? They're a bad team. They're 3-10. There's no fixing that. There's no changing that. That already happened. And so now what you're looking at in terms of evaluation is, are they better than they were when they started? And this is what we talked about at the very beginning of the season, that the record wouldn't matter as much as seeing incremental improvements. For a little while, we didn't see those incremental improvements. I came here on this microphone and I was talking about how, I'm not sure. This isn't going in the right direction, y'all. This is a little bit concerning, blah, blah, blah. And now we're starting to see it all come together. And that was foolish of me, just to be completely honest. I don't know if anybody would admit it, but it was foolish of me to start to evaluate that before we actually saw the real growth beginning. And the real growth beginning wasn't ever going to happen until Kellen Moore had his quarterback, his hand-picked quarterback, on the field. I think he gave Spencer Rattler a very fair shot. Spencer Rattler thinks he got a fair shot too. And then you go from that to getting this opportunity now to put together your offense with your guys, and this is the beginning of that. And so for the Saints going into 2026, there's a lot of, adjustments that'll probably happen on the offensive side. Kellen Moore getting more of his guys in the building. You look at the New England Patriots, who changed almost every starter, not every starter, but almost every starter from 2024, to 2025. I expect to see something similar from 2025 to 2026. Not everything's going to change, but I would expect to see maybe a little bit more wide swath change than we saw from 2024 to 2025. And so the momentum is building. Things are heading in the right direction. And the Saints could end up like our good friend Darian Gray, who on the squad show on Wednesday night with Dylan Sanders and I talked about how this team might go 3-1 over the course of the last 4 games. If they go 3-1 over the last 4 games, that's as many wins over the last 4 games than they had in the first 13. I don't agree with Darian. I don't think that they're going 3-1. Shout out to you, Darian. I'm not coming for you. I know you're listening. I'm not coming for you. You're my guy. But I think that they win 2. And so what's the difference, right? The team wins 2 games in the last 4 in what it took for them to win in 9 games over the course of the first bit of the season. 10 games over the course of the first bit of the season. Yeah, it was 10 games because they were 2-8 by the time it was all said and done. And so that's going in the right direction. Now, the momentum has to continue. It can't stop here. And so that's why I think the momentum is happening. Why is it important? Because that momentum has to carry into the offseason. And it's got to make other players that are going to become available over the course of the offseason look over here to New Orleans and say, I want to be a part of what they're doing. I want to be a part of what's happening over there. And if the Saints find a way to do that, then all of a sudden, things are going not just in the right direction, but things are actively accelerating for the Saints. All right, let's get to a little bit of lagniappe here. I wanted to mention this during the conversation about the Saints defense, but I kind of got on a roll talking about Brandon Staley and everything. But the other big piece for New Orleans is the fact that they are now in a situation to where they could be getting Justin Reed back. I want to start off by saying that I thought Jordan Howden, and in the times that we saw Terrell Burgess, I thought those guys played really well next to Jonas Anchor. I mean, going to Tampa, playing in those conditions, and yeah, were there some flubs? Absolutely. Like everybody got saved by the fact that Emeka Egbuka all of a sudden is dropping passes, despite starting off looking like the offensive rookie of the year. No doubt about that. So no, I'm not saying it was perfect by any stretch of the imagination. However, they didn't necessarily come off as liabilities to me either, going back and looking at the game tape. And so getting Justin Reed back, if they can get him back this weekend, he was upgraded on Thursday. That would be a massive situation for New Orleans, because they might also be getting Taliesin Fuanga back at right tackle. Now, we had the conversation about, does it make sense to maybe say, hey, don't rush back, everything like that, get a look at some of the younger guys. Awesome Richards' injury probably complicates that because he hasn't been at practice so far this week dealing with a high ankle injury. But does getting a greater look at Will Sherman, or getting more of a look at Barry Wesley, or getting Xavier Truss more involved, or anything like that, does that at least give you an opportunity to get a look at some of the other players on your roster? But here's the thing. Taliesin Fuanga is a young and developing player as well. So it's just as valuable to continue to get a look at him. He's in only his 2nd year, and this is his 1st year back at right tackle since leaving college, which was only a year ago. And so I see the value either way. There's no doubt about that. But the Saints could get a little bit of a boost here, trending health-wise in the right direction. They might not. It doesn't look like they're going to be getting Alvin Kamara back this week. And it'd be interesting to see if he comes back before the season is over. This kind of happened last year too, to where he had a late season injury. And it was like, yeah, he's trying to get back out on the field. And then, he didn't. And so it'll be interesting to see how the end of this season goes when it comes to that. I mean, there's no uncertain terms around the idea that Alvin Kamara wants to be on a football field. There's no doubt about that. But it is interesting just sort of seeing this team get a little bit healthier and a little bit healthier and a little bit healthier, and then watching how that trajectory goes throughout the rest of the season. All right, family, we'll have you covered here on the Squad Show after the game, and a little bit of lagniappe over the weekend as well. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me in the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Know what the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust to that nation, I'll holla at you.